Good morning, friends. It is Friday finally, and hopefully Tuesday I will get to come back to school. I'm excited about that. So no more scary Mrs. Evans. I will have makeup on again maybe, and will feel good enough to put it on. Anyway, so let me tell you what we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to talk to my class first, with Mrs. Mays' class, and then Mrs. Mays' class I will tell you what you can do at home, since I found out that you do not have any of our papers at home with you. Miss Mays, when she left, obviously she did not get those to you because she was sick and did not get to come back to the school. So I have things for you to do. You don't need to worry about that work. When you come back, we will get everything taken care of. It's going to be fine, and I will have things for you to do today. So first, let's talk about our Egyptian things for my class. Class, whatever you do not have done, you need to complete that today, so you will get to have Fun Friday. Fun Friday time is going to be from 2:30 today to 3:50, well, about 3:10, because you need to clean up. So you'll get to have Fun Friday time if you get all of your Egyptian things done and the work I'm going to assign you today. So you need to make sure you have all of that done. And that includes the paper I gave you yesterday about chapter 9 of Mummies and Pyramids, where you had to look up an artifact, draw a picture of that artifact and write some facts about it, answer those couple of questions on there. And then today you're going to be making your, I cut these out. You're going to be making your little sarcophagus box. It's important. I didn't color mine. You need to color yours. It's better to color it before you cut it out and glue it, because it's too hard once it's glued together, because it's three-dimensional. So if you will take this though and fold all the sides first, see how I did that? Then you can just push this part in and it closes it up like that. And then you just fold the top over. Can't do it with one hand, but fold the top over and the bottom over and put a little glue on it, same on the bottom. And then this tomb of King Tutankhamun or King Tut, this is Isis on here, the goddess Isis. She's the one on the sides here. My heat just came on, loud. Anyway, but if you'll cut it all out too, and on these sides, you gotta cut that extra little slit. It's hard to see it, but on both the ends, you have to cut that. That way when you fold it up, see how I folded this up on this end? It's easier to get it to fold and to connect, and it makes a box. And then once you get the box, let me put this right here. Once you get the box all made and it's all folded up, then you can put this, when it's all folded up, inside it, and it just rests in there. And it actually looks like they found, when they found King Tut, his sarcophagus in his burial tomb box here, one of the nesting boxes. Okay, so that's something that my class can do. Miss Mays' class, you will be able to do that when you get to come back to school. Miss Mays has those papers in her classroom. And then the other thing that everyone is going to do, so let me go over this for everyone. So that's something extra my class needs to do. And then everyone, this is your assignment for today. You need a piece of paper. You're going to write a 5-paragraph persuasive story today. And I'm going to go over it with you on my screen so you can remember what that is and what you need to have for it to be correct. And for us to it's an opinion writing paper. And your purpose in writing an opinion writing paper is you want to try to convince other people to think in a certain way, kind of encourage them, persuade the reader to share your thoughts, your point of view, and think like you. And you have to persuade them or encourage them to think like you. And a way that you can do that is you have to always give reasons. So we've done this 2 other times. You should be okay with doing this. The first thing you need to have, we're going to look at these together in a minute, is an introduction. Now, before we look at all these things, your topic is, when we had our presidential election, one of the things some of you talked about from the classes was eating maybe some different things at the cafeteria, or eating what you like maybe more times a month. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a persuasive paragraph, and your audience, the people you're writing to, is going to be Mrs. Beam at the cafeteria and all of the wonderful cafeteria ladies over there that cook all your food for you. And she runs the whole cafeteria. So maybe the winning paper will take it over to her and see if she can make it happen for us, okay? So we're going to try to convince the ladies at the cafeteria that you would like to eat something, either something maybe different or something you really enjoy that they cook, and maybe have it an extra day during the month, or an extra day maybe 2 times, maybe every other week or something. So that's what your goal is, that's what your purpose is, and your audience is the cafeteria ladies and Mrs. Beam that runs the cafeteria. So let me flip my camera. Okay, so the first thing we need to have is an introduction, and your introduction restates the title, gives an attention-grabbing sentence for the reader, and lists the 3 reasons you have been talking about. So you need at least, so this would be 1 sentence, this would be 2, and this might be 3 or 4, but you must have 3 sentences in your introduction, okay? Then the next is going to be your 3 reasons paragraphs. You have to have 3 separate paragraphs with reasons for the well, this isn't the costume choice. This is the one we did about our costume, but you have to have 3 separate paragraphs to explain with descriptive words and using convincing reasons. And notice that I indented here, okay? So when you give your reasons, some of you had very short papers. You have to actually write on your reasons. The first paragraph's the introduction. It only has to have 3 sentences. But paragraph 2, 3, and 4, which are your reason paragraphs, they have to have at least 5 to 7 sentences. And they need to actually only discuss the 1 reason in each paragraph. Not 5 different reasons in each paragraph, 1 reason in each paragraph. So if you, let's say you wanted to have pizza. I'm just going to use that because everybody seems to like pizza almost. So let's say you were using pizza. Well, you have to give me 3 separate reasons that are going to be 3 separate paragraphs. You can't say because pizza's good, because I like pizza, because pizza is nice, cool. Those are not reasons. I need an actual reason, like maybe because it doesn't cost a lot to make it. Maybe because a lot of people like it. Maybe it's because you could do a variety. Maybe it's an easy thing to serve. Those are all kinds of reasons, okay? So you must have your introduction that has 3 sentences. It can have more. Paragraph 1, and then paragraph 2, 3, and 4 must have 5 to 7 sentences, and they need to explain the reason. So your first sentence in each of those paragraphs should say, my first reason is, then the next paragraph, my second reason is, third paragraph, my third reason is. So you already have 1 sentence in every one of those because you're explaining what your reason is, okay? And then paragraph 5 is going to be your conclusion. That's where you restate your title, you give your 3 reasons again, and use a catchy phrase at the end. Something that is going to catch the reader's attention and want to pick your paper. And it could be something funny. We've talked about how you can use captions or memes or funny things. It doesn't have to be funny, but it can. But it needs to catch the reader's attention. So that is your writing assignment. You have a 5-paragraph writing assignment that is called, and we're just going to call it, What's for Lunch? That's going to be the title of it. What's for lunch? So you're going to be trying to convince the cafeteria what you want to have for lunch. Okay? So that is everyone. My class needs to do that today, and Miss Mays' class. So both classes. Now, let me show Miss Mays' class something else they're going to do. My class does not have to do this because I told you to do this yesterday. So if you've already done this, you don't need to worry about this. Mrs. Mays' class. Let me flip the screen. You're going to be writing word nerd sentences. Since you do not have your word nerd book at home because you didn't take, some of you didn't take your binders home, here are the words you're going to use. We're going to be doing 15 sentences, 1 word in each sentence, and then you need to write a complex sentence. Okay, let me give you an example. I went to the pyramid. That is not a complex sentence. That is a simple sentence. I went to the pyramid in Egypt and it was super hot. That's a complex sentence, okay? So we need to have pyramid, pharaoh, papyrus, hieroglyphics, mummification, sarcophagus, amulets, immense, paranormal, decrepit, grotesque, decaying, ferociously, sneer, and ranting. Those are your words, okay? Let me look at them just for a second more. So you're going to number your paper to 15, skip lines. You're going to use each of those words, one in each sentence. So you'd have 15 sentences with you done when you're done. Start with a capital letter and with a punctuation mark, and then highlight your word nerd word. If you don't know what a word is on this list, feel free to look that up on your phone or your computer. That is fine if you've forgotten what they are, because I know you don't have your notebooks with you, okay? So Mrs. May's class, you have those two assignments. You have your word nerd sentences and your 5-paragraph what's for lunch persuasive story, okay? Or opinion writing, whichever you want to call it. Okay, and then my class, you also have the what's for lunch writing, and then you're going to make your sarcophagus and your burial tomb today. You're going to finish all your Egypt stuff, including your mural and your coloring for your sugar skulls too. All that stuff has to be done. All that and all your stuff that goes in your Egypt folder, everything that goes, I have mine here. Everything that goes in here, all this stuff, okay? And all your papers that go with your Mummies and Pyramids book, including chapter 9 with the artifact that you should have worked on, okay? So one more time, that's what my class needs. Mrs. Mays' class, that's all your stuff for today. So you can be done at this time. And then my homeroom, you also need to make sure that, like I said, you're going to have Fun Friday from 2:30 to 3:10 today. If all of your stuff is done. If your stuff is not done, you need to stay in your seat and get everything finished. So when I come back on Tuesday and ask for all these things, that you're ready to roll with that, okay? Now, the only thing I have left is, I can tell you, let me tell you I gotta find it. Let me tell you our factor crud, if I can find it. Oh, here it is, the camera one. Okay, it says, the camera is the single most used feature on a smartphone, which I'm using my camera right now. It's a scary camera because I don't have any filters on, but it is a camera nonetheless. So do you think that's a fact or crud? How many of you think that's fact? Raise your hand. How many of you think that's crud? If you chose crud, you are correct. It says not even close. The most used feature is text. People text more often than they access the internet. So they use texting a lot, which makes sense. I mean, people can talk to each other really quick that way. I use texting a lot. Whoa, sorry. Okay, so now, let me sit you right there. We're gonna be reading in our book. So substitute teacher, when it gets about 2:15-ish, 2:10, they can get their snacks and they can listen to me read today. And then at 2:30, they can start Fun Friday time. So they can do their work in the morning and then they'll have lunch and lunch recess. They have PE in the morning too tomorrow because it's Friday. So, all right. So yesterday when we were reading, Charlie goes back into the netherworld again. And when he gets there, he's hiding under the desk because he doesn't want his brother to find him. And then he goes into the netherworld. Then he says, wake up, wake up, wake up. And he wakes up and he's not in the netherworld anymore. Now he's back at his house and he hears his dad downstairs talking to the police officers because they can't find him and they don't know where he is. And then he looks and all the walls in the tower have turned into a forest and he sees the witch walking off in the distance with a child thrown over her shoulder. So that's where we stopped. This is called Clown Down. "Jack!" Charlie shouted, but the boy did not budge. His body appeared to be bound in a blanket, wrapped like an insect in a spider's web. The witch turned around and raised a crooked finger to her lips. "Shh," she hissed. "You'll wake the baby." The cackle that followed seemed to ricochet off every tree in the forest. "Bring him back," Charlie ordered, stepping off the tower's firm wooden floorboards and onto moss-covered ground. "My world, my rules," the witch sneered. "Come and get him, you sniveling little brat." The last thing Charlie saw before the witch vanished behind a tree was his brother's body bouncing against the hag's hunched back. Then, that was when Charlie started to run. A narrow path snaked through the woods, but it was impossible to stay on the trail. Only a few weak beams of moonlight stretched across the forest floor. The darkest shadows were pitch black, and Charlie rushed through them blindly, guided by the fading sound of the witch's laughter. He waded through a foul-smelling mire that sucked both his sneakers off his feet. Thorn-covered brambles ripped his clothing and tore at his skin. Barefoot and bleeding, Charlie kept running until the witch's cackle grew faint to hear. And the path he'd been following was nowhere to be seen. And here's a little, silhouette of her running. His lungs were burning. Charlie stumbled to stop. He doubled over to catch his breath and massaged the painful stitch in his side. When he looked up, he realized how lost he actually was. The trees hovering over him were taller than any he had ever seen. Scabs of lichen clung to their trunks, and limp gray moss dangled from the branches like a hag's hair. One of his feet was slowly sinking into a murky black pool. The other foot was dripping with sludge. But what scared Charlie the most was the thing he sensed lurking between the two trees. He listened but heard nothing at all. No chirping birds or buzzing insects, no rustling leaves or croaking of frogs. The woods were utterly silent. But he wasn't alone. The witch might have been gone, but he knew that his very worst nightmare was near, and he knew it would be coming for him. Ahead stood hundreds of trees. Hundreds more grew to the left and to the right. A surge of fear spun Charlie around. The view behind him was exactly the same. This was the forest he'd tried so hard to avoid. Charlie frantically hunted for his footprints in the mud, hoping he could follow them back to hit the tower. But then he stopped. He promised his mom he would take care of his brother. She hadn't asked Charlie for anything else. And that meant he couldn't leave the netherworld without Jack. Until he rescued his brother, he couldn't go home. And so Charlie kept moving, though he knew the worst nightmare of all could be waiting behind any tree. He would not let that witch win. Charlie swore to himself he'd find Jack, whatever it took. But he had to act fast. Even if the thing in the woods didn't find him, he had a feeling he wouldn't survive in the netherworld more than a couple of days. It appeared to be one big forest. The water he'd seen was too nasty to drink, and there was nothing to eat but lichen moss and the strange red mushrooms that sprouted out of the ground. Charlie remembered little of what his mom had taught him about mushrooms, but he was pretty sure that these weren't the kind of fungi that you would put in an omelet. Each specimen had 5 red tentacles that oozed globs of green slime and a black hole in the center like a gaping mouth. Charlie bent to inspect one of the mushrooms more closely and caught his breath. As he watched its squid-like tentacles began to writhe. Then something horrible poked its head out of the hole in the center. It was shiny and black with 2 twitching antennae. Just above the bug's wings was a dull yellow segment with a black spot in the middle. Charlie recognized this creature at once. It was a carrion beetle, and its food of choice was rotten flesh. 2 years earlier, Kid and Charlie's class had brought 3 of these insects to show and tell, and for weeks they'd crawled through Charlie's bad dreams. The real bugs had been horrible, but at least they'd been small. In the netherworld, they seemed to grow as big as rats. Charlie felt something tickle his foot and glanced down to find a monstrous beetle creeping across his toes. He kicked, flinging the bug against a tree. It bounced off the bark, it hit the ground, and kept walking. And to Charlie's horror, it was no longer alone. When he investigated the mushroom, an army of carrion beetles had appeared. Thousands blanketed the floor, and they marched over his feet as if he wasn't even there. Everywhere Charlie looked, there were bugs. There seemed to be no end to the swarm, which left him faced with 3 terrible choices. He could stand still, hoping the bugs would pass. He could try to escape, which would mean crushing the creatures and feeling the guts ooze over between his toes. Or he could shuffle his feet along the ground and do his best to move with the beetles. Here's a picture. Gross. Charlie slid 1 foot forward, and thousands of beetles flapped their wings as though they were sending him a sign of approval. They appeared to be leading him somewhere. Charlie knew it might not be a place he wanted to go, but he had no other options. He was stuck in a nightmare. If there was any chance of saving his brother, he had to find out where the bugs wanted to take him. Charlie shuffled along for what felt like forever without seeing anything other than trees. Just as he was about to give up, he caught the fair scent of food wafting through the air. It reminded him of concoctions Charlotte always left bubbling on the kitchen stove at the mansion. As he raised his nose to sniff, his eyes turned skyward. High up in the forest canopies, nestled between 2 skinny trees, sat a cottage. Despite its location, it was an ordinary-looking structure. The walls were made of logs, and the pitched roof was thatched with brown straw. A warm golden light illuminated 4 little windows. It looked perfectly cozy, and yet the sight of the house was unsettling. Charlie knew he'd seen this house somewhere before. The army of bugs that had delivered him to the cottage began to scatter. Some dug back into the earth, others climbed up trees, most simply slipped into the darkness. Charlie fought the urge to run. Along with the beetles, the cottage was one of the few signs of life he encountered. He knew he couldn't just turn away. He searched for a ladder for a set of stairs, but there appeared to be no way to reach it. Finally, he stood back and shouted, "Hello!" The wooden floorboards high above his head began creaking. The figure of an enormous feline appeared on the porch. It reached out a paw and swatted down a beetle that was flying past. A loud crunching followed. Charlie cringed when he saw the cat standing on her hind legs and peering down at him from the balcony. Her whiskers were wet with something green. Bug guts, Charlie realized, and almost gagged with disgust. "Oh, how kind of you to bring me some hors d'oeuvres," the cat purred. "I'm so pleased you could make it for dinner." "Agatha," Charlie breathed. As much as he despised the cat, it was kind of a relief to have found her. "Hello, dinner," Agatha replied. "Where's the witch?" Charlie demanded. "And where's Jack? If you've touched so much as his—" "Oh, relax," the cat said with a yawn. "We have to fatten him up before we feast. The little piggy is probably eating a gallon of ice cream as we speak. Now climb up and come inside. It's time for dinner. I'm absolutely ravenous." The whole situation was so strange that Charlie almost laughed. "Do I look stupid?" "Oh, you'll be safe," the cat purred. "The thing in the forest can't reach you up here." Charlie's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't budge. "I'm not climbing up there so you can eat me." "Oh, I won't eat all of you," Agatha said. "Just a few little pieces. Don't worry. A very important gentleman has been waiting for you to arrive. I can nibble on those delectable toes, but he wants to meet the rest of you later." "I didn't come here to meet anyone. I came here to get Jack. I'm going to find him and I'm going to wake up." "Wake up?" Agatha snickered. "You can't wake up, Charlie Laird. You're not asleep. You came through the portal of your own free will. Your body's here too, which means you're stuck in the netherworld. That was all part of the plan." Charlie couldn't have been more confused. "What plan?" Agatha yawned. "I'm not allowed to say." "Then I guess we have nothing to talk about." Charlie turned away. "Do you really believe I'd let you escape that easily?" Agatha called. "Surely you recognize this lovely cottage?" "I borrowed it from an old woman you read about once. She and her house gave you nightmares for weeks. Another little fear you never have quite dealt with." "How would you know?" Charlie scoffed without glancing back, but he was getting more nervous by the second. The netherworld seemed to be home to all of his childhood nightmares, and he wasn't eager to see which one would be showing up next. So he set off through the forest. But he hadn't gone very far before the earth began to tremble beneath his feet. He froze, and after a pause, there was another quake, started shaking. Then he realized that it was footsteps. Whatever was following him was enormous, and it was getting closer and closer. The end. Okay, so I will see you Tuesday, and we will continue reading that. Be good today for your sub. Do all of your work that I've assigned to you, which is your writing assignment for your 5 paragraphs for What's for Lunch, and do make all your Egyptian things, Sarcophagus Box, all this stuff. And I will see you Tuesday. Yay! And I love you. Have a great day. And remember, kindness is a language everyone can hear. Bye.